The phone buzzed on the passenger seat like a hornet trapped in a jar, its vibration cutting through the hum of the highway. I glanced down, my hands white-knuckled on the wheel, rain sluicing across the windshield in sheets that blurred the taillights ahead. The text glowed on the screen. "Don't come to Dad's funeral. You're not welcome." From Ben. My brother. The words hit like a gut punch, sucking the air from my lungs. I swerved slightly, tires hydroplaning on the slick asphalt, the car's horn blaring from the lane beside me. Fury boiled up, hot and acrid, tasting like bile in the back of my throat. Dad was dead. And this was how I found out, from a goddamn text telling me to stay away. I pulled over onto the shoulder, gravel crunching under the tires, the engine idling like a ragged breath. My chest heaved as I stared at the message, rereading it until the letters blurred. Dad had been sick for months. Lung cancer, the kind that crept in slow and tore everything apart. I'd called Ben last week, asking about the latest scans, but he'd been curt, evasive. "He's hanging in there," was all he'd said. Hanging in there. Now this. No details on when Dad had passed, no mention of arrangements, just exclusion, cold and final. My fingers trembled as I typed back. What the hell? When did he die? But I deleted it. Well, not yet. I needed to think, to let the shock settle into something sharper. The rain hammered the roof, a relentless drumbeat that matched the pounding in my temples. I leaned back, closing my eyes, and the memories flooded in unbidden. Dad's house in the suburbs of Chicago, the one with the sagging porch and the overgrown yard where Ben and I used to play as kids. Ben, always the golden boy, taller, smarter, the one who got the scholarships and the pats on the back. Me, Alex, the screw-up who dropped out of college after Mom left, bouncing from job to job while Ben built his real estate empire. Dad had favored him, sure, but there was love there for me too, in the quiet moments. Fishing trips on Lake Michigan. His rough hand on my shoulder after a bad day. Or so I'd thought. Had it all been a lie? Was this Ben's doing, some petty power play to erase me from the family narrative? Heartbreak twisted in my gut, mingling with the anger until it formed a knot I couldn't untangle. I pictured Ben at the funeral, standing graveside in his tailored suit, shaking hands with relatives who'd whisper about my absence. "Alex couldn't make it," he'd say, his voice smooth as oil. But why? What had I done to deserve this? Resentment simmered, years of slights bubbling up. Ben borrowing money from Dad that he never repaid, me scraping by on my mechanic's salary while he flipped houses for profit. And now, with Dad gone, what about the will? The house? The savings? Obsession took root, a dark vine wrapping around my thoughts. Had to know. I had to make him pay for this humiliation. I drove the rest of the way to my apartment in a haze, the city lights smearing like wet paint through the rain. Inside, the place smelled of stale coffee and motor oil. My work boots kicked off by the door, tools scattered on the kitchen table. I poured a whiskey, neat, the burn steadying me as I paced the cramped living room. Denial crept in first. Maybe it was a mistake. Prank. But Ben wasn't the type for jokes. He was calculated, always 3 steps ahead. I dialed his number, but it went straight to voicemail. His voice clipped and professional. "This is Ben Harlan. Leave a message." I hung up, slamming the phone down. Fine. I'd find out myself. The next morning, the sun pierced through the blinds like accusatory fingers, and I woke with a headache that throbbed in time with my heartbeat. Guilt gnawed at me. Why hadn't I visited Dad more? Called more? But resentment shoved it aside. I scoured the internet for obituaries, my fingers flying over the keyboard. There it was. Robert Harlan, 68. Passed peacefully on November 3rd, services at St. Mary's Cemetery, November 7th. Tomorrow. No mention of survivors beyond Ben. My name erased like I'd never existed. Humiliation burned my cheeks. I could hear the whispers already, the pitying looks if anyone asked about me. I grabbed my keys and headed to Dad's house, the drive a blur of strip malls and gray skies. The neighborhood hadn't changed. Kids on bikes, leaves swirling in the wind, but the house looked smaller, more defeated. Ben's BMW was in the driveway, gleaming under the overcast light. I parked across the street, heart pounding, and watched. Through the window, I saw him moving inside, sorting papers on the dining table. Alone. No mourners yet. Part of me wanted to storm in, demand answers, but doubt held me back. What if Dad had wanted this? What if he'd confided in Ben, said something like, "Alex is a disappointment. Keep him away." The thought fueled my fantasies of justice. Me crashing the funeral, exposing Ben's lies. Or something darker. Slashing his tires, keying his car, watching his perfect life unravel. But no, that was too petty. Revenge needed to be precise, a scalpel, not a hammer. I sat there for hours, the car growing stuffy, until Ben emerged, locking the door behind him. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes, but there was a smugness in his stride that made my blood boil. As he drove off, I slipped across the street, my breath shallow. The spare key was still under the flower pot, Dad's old habit. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of illness, antiseptic and decay, mingled with the faint tobacco from his pipes. Papers cluttered the table. Medical bills, bank statements. And there the will. My hands shook as I flipped through it. Everything to Ben. The house, the savings, over $200,000. Me. A single line. To my son Alex, I leave my fishing gear, in hopes he'll find peace on the water. Peace. Felt like a slap. Heartbreak crashed over me anew, tears blurring the ink. But then a note tucked in the envelope in Dad's shaky handwriting. Ben says you're using again. Can't risk it. Forgive me. Using. I hadn't touched drugs since my 20s, after Mom's overdose. Ben had lied. Manipulated Dad in his final months, poisoning him against me. Rage ignited, cold and unyielding. He must have wanted it all, the inheritance, the control. Obsession sharpened into resolve. I'd make him regret this. But how? Fear flickered. What if I got caught? Moral conflict tugged at me. Was revenge worth becoming like him? That night, back in my apartment, I planned. Subtle hints first. Anonymous calls to his clients, whispering about shady deals. Ben's real estate business thrived on reputation. Tarnish it, and he'd crumble. But I needed proof. I remembered Dad's old safe in the basement. The combination his birthday. Maybe there was something there. Documents, secrets Ben had hidden. I returned under cover of darkness. The neighborhood silent save for a distant dog bark. The house creaked as I descended the stairs, flashlight beam cutting through the dust. The safe opened with a click. Cash, deeds, and a folder labeled Ben's debts. Inside, ooze from casinos, loan shark notes. Ben had a gambling problem, hundreds of thousands deep. He'd been siphoning Dad's money to cover it. And their emails. Ben forging Dad's signature on transfers while Dad was in chemo, too weak to notice. Suppressed rage boiled over. This wasn't just exclusion. It was theft, betrayal of the deepest kind. I pocketed copies, my mind racing with possibilities. I'd expose him at the funeral. Stand up during the eulogy, wave the evidence. But no, too public. Suspense built in my chest. I needed to draw it out, make him squirm. The next day, funeral day, I watched from afar. Hidden in the tree line at the cemetery. Rain pattered on the leaves, soaking my jacket. Ben stood under an umbrella, flanked by aunts and uncles. His face a mask of grief. As the casket lowered, he glanced around, as if sensing eyes on him. Tension coiled in me like a spring. This was just the beginning. I texted him from a burner phone. I know about the debts. Dad's money wasn't yours to take. No response, but I imagined his panic, the sweat beading on his forehead. Guilt pricked me. Dad wouldn't want this feud, but resentment drowned it. He'd started it. Now I'd finish. Over the following weeks, the slow burn intensified. I leaked tidbits to his colleagues. A forged document here, a whispered rumor there. Ben's deals started falling through. I heard through mutual friends he was drinking more, snapping at his wife. Inner conflict raged. Was I obsessed? Crossing a line. But each night, staring at Dad's fishing rod in the corner, heartbreak fueled me. He deserved justice. One evening Ben called. "Alex, we need to talk." His voice was strained, a crack in the facade. I smiled in the dark. "About what, brother?" "Dad's funeral." "Was. Just come over. Please." Suspicion flared, but curiosity won. The trap was set, mine or his. The drive to Ben's house felt like navigating a minefield, every red light a moment to second-guess. His place was in the upscale part of town. Manicured lawns, security gates that whispered of success built on lies. I parked down the block, the burner phone heavy in my pocket, loaded with photos of the forged documents. Fear gnawed at the edges of my resolve. What if he knew I'd broken in? What if this was his way of confronting me, turning the tables? But cold resolve pushed me forward. This was for Dad, for the years of being the afterthought. Ben answered the door in sweatpants and a rumpled shirt. His eyes bloodshot, stubble shadowing his jaw. The house smelled of takeout and whiskey, a far cry from the polished image he projected. "Alex," he said, voice low, glancing over my shoulder as if expecting shadows. "Come in." The living room was dim, curtains drawn against the evening light. Photos lined the mantel. Ben's wedding, his kids, nieces and nephews I'd barely seen. No pictures of me or Dad. Humiliation stung anew. He poured us drinks without asking, the clink of ice echoing in the silence. "So," I said, not touching the glass, "why the invite now? After telling me to stay away from Dad's funeral?" He sank into the armchair, rubbing his temples. "It wasn't my idea." The words hung there, manipulative, shifting blame already. "Bullshit." Anger flared, hot and immediate. "I saw the will. A note. You told him I was using. You stole from him." Ben's eyes widened, a flicker of panic. "How do you?" "Look, Alex," Dad was confused at the end. "Med. I was protecting him. From me." My voice rose, trembling. "Or from your gambling debts." Found the folder. "The transfers." He paled, setting his glass down with a thud. "You broke into the house." "Spare key." "Dad's habit." I leaned forward, voice dropping to a whisper. "You manipulated a dying man. Excluded me from his goodbye. Why?" Dialogue hung taut, revealing layers. Ben sighed, defeat in his posture. "Okay. Truth. Dad found out about the debts. He was furious, threatened to cut me out. I convinced him you were the problem. Said I'd seen you high, that you'd ask for money. It was easier than admitting my screw-ups." Heartbreak twisted deeper. Not just betrayal but cowardice. "Easier. You ruined our family for your ego." "I'm sorry," he murmured, but it rang hollow, suppressed rage in his clenched fists. "The business is tanking. Rumors everywhere." "Is that you?" I said nothing, letting the silence build suspense. Obsession had led here, but doubt crept in. Was this justice or destruction? Ben stood pacing. "We can fix this. Split the inheritance. Just stop whatever you're doing." Moral conflict surged. Part of me wanted to agree, bury the hatchet. But resentment won. "Too late. You made your choice." As I left, his plea echoed. "Alex, please. Think about the kids." That night, plans solidified. I'd go bigger. Contact the loan sharks, tip them off that Ben had Dad's money. Let them collect. Fantasies played out. Ben cornered, begging. But guilt whispered. His family would suffer. Was I the monster now? Weeks blurred into quiet calculation. I shadowed Ben, noting his routines. Gym at dawn, office till late. Tension rose with each near miss. Him glancing in his rearview, paranoia etching his face. One evening, I slipped into his office after hours. The lock picked with tools from work. Files confirmed it. More forgeries, embezzlement from clients. I copied everything, heart pounding to the tick of the wall clock. Then the pivot. An anonymous email to his biggest client, attachments included. The fallout was swift. Lawsuits whispered in the grapevine. Ben's BMW repossessed. I watched from afar as he argued with his wife on the porch, her face streaked with tears. Suppressed rage in his posture, but heartbreak in hers. Inner thoughts tormented me. This was revenge, but at what cost? Obsession blinded. Now doubt flooded. Ben called again, voice breaking. You win. Meet me at Dad's grave. Midnight. I'll sign over half. Suspicion spiked. Was it a trap? But the pull was irresistible. The cemetery loomed under a moonless sky. Gravestones like silent sentinels. Wind rustled leaves, carrying the scent of damp earth. Ben waited by Dad's plot, a folder in hand. Here, he said, thrusting it at me. Deed transfer. Bank docs. Take it. I flipped through, pulse racing. It looked legit. Why now? Because you're right. I betrayed you both. His eyes met mine, layered with regret. Dad loved you more, you know. That's why it hurt, to see him disappointed in me. Manipulation. Or truth. Tension peaked as I pocketed the folder. This doesn't erase the funeral. I know. He turned away, shoulders slumped. But as I walked back to my car, tires slashed, engine tampered. Wait, no. Quiet. Too quiet. The attack came from behind. A shadow lunging, arm around my throat. Not Ben. Rough hands, casino ink on the knuckles. Where's the money Ben owes? Panic surged. Ben had set me up, tipped them off, used me as bait. Struggle ensued, fists flying in the dark, gravel biting my knees. I fought back, years of resentment fueling blows. One thug down, but the other pulled a knife, glinting cold. In the chaos, Ben reappeared, shouting, "Stop! He's not the one." Confusion. The thug hesitated, and I seized the moment, tackling him. Sirens wailed distant. Someone called the cops? Ben helped me up, breathing hard. I didn't plan this. They followed me. Liar. His eyes held fear, genuine. As police lights flashed, the truth unraveled. Ben had confessed to the sharks, offered me as collateral. No, interrogation revealed he'd been paying them off with Dad's money. But when I exposed him, they came collecting. He'd lured me here to warn me, but they ambushed. In the station, handcuffed beside him, Ben whispered, "I texted you to stay away because Dad asked." He knew about my debts, didn't want you dragged in. The note was his idea, to protect you. Shock jolted me. Denial crumbled. Dad's final act. Exclusion as love. Heartbreak reframed. Ben's betrayal mixed with his own guilt. He'd tried to shield me, but lies compounded. Released on bail, I stood outside, rain starting again. Ben approached. "Forgive me." Cold resolve melted into weary acceptance. Not yet. But maybe. The twist. Revenge had exposed not just Ben's sins, but Dad's hidden mercy. Poetic justice. My pursuit destroyed Ben's life, but saved mine from the shadows. Guilt lingered, but so did a fragile peace. As I drove away, the phone buzzed. A text from Ben's wife. "Thank you." He needed this rock bottom. Unexpected consequences. The cycle broken or just paused.